During the 13th to 14th centuries, the Mongol Empire became one of the largest empires of all time. Based in the Central Asian steppes, they influenced numerous other peoples in the land they conquered. First is a look at how they made this vast empire. In 1206, Genghis Khan initiated 2 decades of Mongol aggression and started conquering China, which was toward the east. This began the series of conquests which created the Mongol Empire. He first launched a campaign in northwest China and eventually conquered Beijing in 1215. In 1219, Genghis Khan moved eastward and invaded Khwarezm, a state east of the Caspian Sea which included most of Iran. The biggest takeaway from this conquest was the fear that the Mongols instilled into everybody that was in the Middle East, and even Europe learned about him from this conquest. This fear led to many people allowing themselves to be taken over by the Mongols, which in turn helped them establish such a large empire because they did not have to use up many resources to conquer so much land. In 1227, Genghis Khan died, and his son Ogedei became the Great Khan. After the death of Genghis Khan, the Mongol Empire covered 24 million kilometers, which was twice as large as the Roman Empire and the largest empire ever in history. His death led to the empire being split up into 4 khanates, or states: the Il Khan, Golden Horde, Yuan Empire, and the Jagadai Khanate. In 1234, Ogedei takes over most of northern China and threatened the southern Song. This domination by the Mongols led to the weakening of the Song Empire and the eventual creation of the Yuan Empire. In 1258, after the death of Ogedei, Genghis Khan's grandson, Batu, became Great Khan and sacked the Abbasid Caliphate and defeated the capital, Baghdad. The Mongols were then able to collect tribute from the entire Middle East and establish the Il Khan state a few years later in 1260. Il Khan was founded by Genghis Khan's other grandson, Hulegu, and it contained Iran, Azerbaijan, Mesopotamia, and parts of Armenia. The Il Khan was also a doorway for the Mongols to spread their influence and expand to Europe, which they did under the control of Batu, who was another grandson of Genghis Khan. In 1271, Kublai Khan declared himself Great Khan and created the Yuan Empire, which controlled China and parts of Siberia. This led to the Mongols destroying the southern Song and eventually expanding to parts of Vietnam and Japan. However, after the death of Ogedei, the family was not unified as there were conflicts between Jagadai and Kublai. Even though they weren't unified, they continued to expand, and the creation of the Yuan allowed the east of Asia to be open to the Middle East for the first time. This allowed goods to move freely along the Silk Road and other trade routes. In the Jagadai Khanate, Timur began to expand while the Il Khan and the Golden Horde fought in 260. Timur the Lane defeated the Sultanate of Northern Delhi and the Ottoman Empire, but died in 1405 while launching a campaign into China. From 1347 to 1352, the spread of the bubonic plague across Asia into Europe killed many people. It was spread along the Silk Road and started in China. It devastated the population of many empires, and it also hurt the Mongol army severely. In 1349, the Ottomans defeated the Il Khan, and the Il Khan lost their rule in the Middle East. And in 1368, the Yuan dynasty was overthrown by the Ming dynasty. The Yuan being overthrown was a result of Mongol decline and inter-Mongol feuds between the leaders of the Khanates. After the Ming gained control, the Mongols had no influence in China or the Middle East.
As the Mongols were conquering the land to make their vast empire, they disrupted many political systems of Asia by taking their land. They weren't very good at creating a governmental system, as there were nomads previously. This created many political problems in their empire. Compounding on this, the Mongol was one of the largest empires of the world, making it hard to have one unified state due to communication issues. To try and form political stability, the Mongols would take people they conquered that are good at administration and put them in a position to govern. When Genghis Khan died, Ogedei, his son, took control of the empire, expanding it to become the world's largest empire. Eventually, Kublai Khan came to power, occupying Korea and Vietnam. Upon his death, the fighting between the Mongol factions intensified, causing the Mongol Empire to split into 4 khanates: the Golden Horde, the Yuan dynasty, the Il Khanate, and the Jagadai Khanate. This separation of the Mongol Empire set the foundations for all of the area that it influenced. The Jagadai Khanate, located around India, would set the foundations for the Mughal Empire, which would be the last classical empire of India. The Jagadai Khanate ruled over Crimea, southern Russia, Persia, and northern India, some parts of Central Asia, as well as parts of the Middle East. The Golden Horde would rule over Russia and parts of Siberia, and the Il Khans ruled over Persia, mostly Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, and parts of Armenia. And finally, the Yuan dynasty ruled over China, Korea, parts of Siberia, and Tibet. The Mongols ended up moving the Chinese capital to Beijing so it could become an easily accessed political center. The Yuan dynasty wasn't very popular, as the Chinese didn't like foreigners ruling them and was promptly kicked out and replaced by the Ming. Mongols were a very big part of the Western and Eastern economies. Their conquests, spanning from Europe to the Pacific Ocean, created one continuous empire that would uninterruptedly link the West and the East. The Mongols reinvigorated the Silk Road trade route that had disintegrated years before, and also provided safe trade for all those who used it, only requiring a small trade tax. They said that the trade was so safe that a man could walk from one end of the Mongol Empire to the other end with a gold plate on his head without fear of being robbed. This allowed for the exchange of ideas, goods, and labor. Without the Mongols, gunpowder and diseases such as Black Death, typhus, influenza, and smallpox would not have spread to Europe as fast as it did. This trade was so successful due to a great system of communication they had, called the Yam system, that resembled the Pony Express. The Mongols, being nomads, had to rely on getting manufactured goods by trading. Mongol nobles had to trade with China to get the silk they liked to wear, as well as trading with other nations to get porcelain. The Mongols, like the Chinese before them, tried to use paper money in their empire to create a standardized currency. Like the Chinese, this launched the economy into a deep depression that lasted past the end of the Il Khans in 1349. Due to the depression, the nobles competed for decreasing revenues.
Since history was recorded, Mongols practiced shamanic religion. This was called Chengerism, and it was a religion based on mythology based on nomadic folk. Chengerism was commonly named Mongolian shamanism, and it included medicine, religion, nature, and worship. Chengerism was influenced by Buddhism, incorporating rituals and traditions through all aspects of life. It had many deities, which were gods and goddesses, and their own legends that ruled the universe. Throughout the 17th century, Mongols believed that all things that existed on Earth came from the creator of a universe, or the spirit of the sky, who was Tengri, or the first deity. Men went to pray to the Lashan at the upper part of the Orkhon River and performed animal sacrifices to pray for rain, for crops, and for a great life. Women and children were not allowed to go. The Khans were considered sons of Tengri, who gave to each Khan the wisdom and authority to govern the people. Khans and the shamans became the link between the deities and the people. When the Mongols started expanding territories, they were very tolerating of their other religions because they usually kept a religion that was already in the town that they invaded. This peaceful interaction between societies that they conquered was called Pax Mongolica. Socially, the Mongols were organized in tribes because of their nomadic traditions. Mongols had a great and superior military power due to their great abilities in archery and cavalry skills. They lived in felt tents called yurts that also are still popular today. A four-class system was installed in the late 1200s in the Yuan period. This system gave advantage to the Mongols. In this way, the leader, Genghis Khan, set the status of people based on merit. He also took over the other clans while overthrowing the rich, and in return the peasants loved him. He helped adopt gunpowder in order to defeat more challenging enemies and helped it spread to Europe. The Mongols were feared for their devastating invasions. Celebrations like weddings and burials that involved horse racing, presents, dancing, food, and a lot of alcohol were very important. As food, since they depended only on herding and grazing, Mongols divided their food into white and brown foods. White were dairy consumed in the summer, and the meat was consumed during the winter. The Il Khans supported a great cultural flowering time where they adopted cultural technologies from the towns that were conquered, like Iran. There were many advances in mathematics under the Old Beg, like Al-Kashi, who proposed the value of pi. Another notable scientist, a Shiite scholar, Nasir al-Din Tusi, wrote history, poetry, ethics, and religion, contributing mathematics and cosmology. Others contributed algebra and trigonometry. Although most Mongols were illiterate, many books were written, like the Altan Tobichi or Golden Chronicle by Lusandazan. During the Qing period, Ulaanbaatar became a center of culture.
The Mongols were heavily influenced by a nomadic way of life. When the Mongols came to conquer the many locations in Asia, such as Tibet, China, Russia, and the many cultures of those lands came to have a large influence on Mongolia. The beginning culture that the Mongols developed held nomadic ways of life, as they began from the dry, high plains of the Central Asian steppes. Soon, Genghis Khan began to expand the Mongolian Empire. He promoted people based on merit rather than family position and allowed the lower classes of conquered tribes to join him. While killing the leaders of conquered tribes, the Mongols, though broken between the four khanates of Il Khanate, Golden Horde, Chagatai Khanate, and the Yuan dynasty, were a nation united between common ancestry and cultural beliefs. Due to the massive expansion of the Mongolian Empire, cross-Eurasian trade began to flourish mainly due to their highly protected trade routes. Rice became a large item in Persian diet due to Mongolian culture diffusion and cross-Eurasian trade. Cross-culture pollination or culture diffusion also occurred due to the Mongols not being able to perform specific tasks such as recording history or data themselves. So they used useful people from the lands that they conquered and moved them to places where their talents and knowledge could be useful to improve the Mongolian Empire. Even though the Mongols were seen as a vicious, barbaric group of peoples, they were unprecedentedly tolerant of different religions. The Mongols themselves were shamanists, but because their religion was tied to their origins, they did not expect everyone to be already knowledgeable of it and assimilate into their religion. Due to this, they allowed Muslims and Buddhists and Christians in the empire. Due to the origins of the Mongols and inherently being pastoralists, nomads, they became extremely powerful when it came to warfare and being able to adapt to different weapons. If a village or group of peoples were to surrender to the Mongols would then offer them protection. Many villages who heard the long drums, the loud drums, the Mongols beat right before a raid or invasion, the victims' villages would usually immediately surrender, as the reputation of the strength of the Mongols spread across the land, describing the Mongols as the most powerful group of warriors to exist. A quote by Marco Polo in The Travels of Marco Polo: "It is the women who tend to their commercial concerns, buying and selling, and who tend to all the needs."
In conclusion, the frightening military tactics the Mongols used led to mass expansion across Asia and Europe. This mass expansion led to heavy economic changes throughout the world due to cultural diffusion, trade with new countries and new trade routes, and the exchange of new technologies. With mass expansion came the problem of maintaining a massive empire, which the Mongols did so by using governors throughout the land and letting the conquered people usually go about their own business. But soon the empire became too large, unsustainable, and eventually toppled over itself.